You're 22 years old in 1580 Venice, earning 300 ducats a night, more than a master craftsman makes in a year. You discuss Petrarch with senators, perform music for ambassadors, and own property in your own name. But there's a price no one mentions until it's too late. You wake before dawn in your rented palazzo near the Grand Canal, and your first task isn't choosing jewelry, it's checking your face in the mirror for the telltale sores that mean your career, and possibly your life, are over. Welcome to History Snapshots. This is what life as a cortigiana honesta, an honest courtesan, really looked like, and what it reveals about the cost of independence in a world designed to deny it still echoes today. Venice in the 1570s and 1580s was the wealthiest city-state in Europe, a maritime empire where silk, spices, and secrets flowed through its canals. The city's 11,000 registered courtesans, one for every 3 adult men, weren't just selling their bodies. They were selling culture, conversation, and the illusion of intimacy to a class of men who couldn't marry for love. Patrician younger sons, forbidden from wedding to preserve family fortunes, turned to courtesans for companionship. Foreign diplomats sought them for intelligence as much as pleasure, and the courtesans themselves, they occupied the space no other women could, educated, autonomous, and financially independent. For a while, becoming a cortigiana honesta required more than beauty. It demanded years of training that most noble women never received. By age 15, a prospective courtesan had already spent years learning to read Latin and Italian, to play the lute or harpsichord, to sing madrigals, and to debate philosophy and poetry. Her mother, often a former courtesan herself, hired tutors in rhetoric, dance, and classical literature. The investment was enormous. A single silk velvet gown, woven with gold thread and trimmed with Flemish lace, could cost 150 ducats, 2 years' wages for a skilled artisan. But the gown was essential. When a courtesan appeared at a ridotto, the semi-private gambling houses where Venice's elite mingled, she had to project wealth, refinement, and unattainability. Her client list read like a who's who of European power: senators, cardinals, German bankers, French ambassadors. Veronica Franco, the most famous courtesan of the 1570s, entertained King Henri III of France in 1574, presenting him with a portrait of herself and 2 sonnets. She later published 2 volumes of poetry, Terze Rime in 1575 and Letter Familiari in 1580, openly defending her profession and challenging her male critics. How did a woman without a husband's name command such respect in a patriarchal society? Your day begins at dawn with your servants. You employ at least 3, including a gondolier and a maid who doubles as a chaperone. You spend 2 hours on your appearance. Lead-based powder to whiten your skin, belladonna drops to dilate your pupils, and saffron dye to lighten your hair, which you bleach sitting on your altana, the rooftop terrace under the scorching sun. By midday, you're receiving visitors in your salon. Not clients, not yet. These are poets, musicians, and intellectuals who gather for conversation. You serve wine and candied fruit, and you recite your latest sonnet. This is the performance within the performance. You must be seen as a muse, not merely a commodity. The line between patron and client is deliberately blurred. In the evening, the real work begins. A senator arrives by private gondola. You've prepared a meal: roasted capon, almond pastries, Venetian wine. You discuss the politics of the Council of Ten, the ongoing war with the Ottomans, the latest scandal involving a cardinal. You play the virginal, a small harpsichord, and sing. Only after hours of this elaborate courtship does the transaction occur. You charge to 2 to 5 ducats for the night, sometimes much more. Here's the mechanism that made the whole system work. Courtesans operated in a legal grey zone, tolerated because they kept patrician marriages intact and foreign dignitaries entertained. But that tolerance was always conditional. You own your house, or rather you rent it under your own name, a legal privilege denied to married women whose property belonged to their husbands. You have a bank account. You've invested in a small shipment of pepper from the Levant. On paper, you're financially independent. In practice, you're one illness away from ruin. The average career of a cortigiana honesta lasted 10 to 15 years, from roughly age 18 to the early 30s. After that, your clients moved on to younger women. Veronica Franco herself, despite her fame and literary success, spent her final years in relative poverty, dependent on the charity of former patrons. But the greater threat was disease. Syphilis, known as the French disease, or mal français, was epidemic in Venice by the 1570s. The initial sore might appear weeks after infection. The rash and fever followed months later. By the tertiary stage, years down the line, the disease attacked the brain, the heart, the bones. There was no cure. Mercury treatments, the standard remedy, were almost as deadly as the disease itself. And then there was childbirth. Courtesans who became pregnant faced a brutal choice: a dangerous abortion using pennyroyal or rue, or carrying to term and hoping to survive the delivery. Maternal mortality rates hovered around 1 in 50 births, but for women without access to family support, the risks were higher. What happened when the money ran out and the patrons disappeared? In 1580, Veronica Franco was denounced to the Inquisition for practicing witchcraft, specifically for using incantations and love magic to ensnare her clients. The charge was almost certainly brought by a rival courtesan or a client she'd rejected. She was interrogated, her house searched, her books examined. She defended herself with eloquence and legal precision, and the case was eventually dropped. But the message was clear. No matter how educated, how wealthy, how well connected you were, you remained vulnerable. The Venetian state tolerated courtesans, but it did not protect them. Sumptuary laws, periodically enforced, restricted the clothing courtesans could wear in public. They were required to display a yellow scarf or veil to mark their profession. The laws were inconsistently applied, but the threat was always there. You could be humiliated, fined, or expelled at any moment, and your peers were not your allies. The Catalogo de tutte le principali et più onorate cortigiane di Venezia, a 1565 directory of courtesans, listed names, addresses, and prices, a guide for clients, but also a tool for rivals to undercut each other. Trust was a luxury you couldn't afford. Yet despite all this, courtesans like Franco, Gaspara Stampa, and Tulia d'Aragona left behind poetry, letters, and published works that claimed their voices in a world determined to silence them. But this did not mean they escaped the structure that consumed them. Most died young, forgotten, and poor. By age 40, if you've survived the syphilis, the childbirths, the betrayals, and the Inquisition, you're no longer earning 300 ducats a night. You're living in a rented room in Cannaregio, the poorest district, selling off your gowns one by one. The senators who once quoted Petrarch to you now pass you in the street without recognition. The palazzo near the Grand Canal belongs to a younger woman who's just beginning her own countdown. This is the unspoken contract of the cortigiana honesta. A decade of wealth and autonomy In exchange for a lifetime of precarity, Venice offered its courtesans a kind of freedom, but only within a system designed to consume them. What the courtesan's life reveals isn't a triumph of female independence. It's the predictable outcome when autonomy is granted only on terms that guarantee its own destruction. The Renaissance courtesan could own property, publish books, and reject marriage, but only by accepting a profession that would discard her the moment her youth faded. In your own world, watch for the same pattern. Opportunities that promise freedom, but are structured to expire. The job that offers flexibility but no security. The platform that gives you a voice but owns your audience. The autonomy that costs more than it pays. Real independence isn't access to a system designed to dispose of you. It's the ability to build one that doesn't.